All right, Bruce, back at you. I wanted to do something a little bit different, although this is kind of informative, and I have a number of questions for you guys. So I'm going to ask you to like and comment. And in particular, I want you to tell me what more you want me to go into in some of these categories. So let's jump in here. I'll show you what I mean. So, what I did, I wanted to dive into yield max and their different offerings a little bit from a very high level. And then I wanted to talk about some other funds that I'm going to be diving into deeper. And that's where I wanted you to give me your input in terms of what you like, what you use, what you may have used in the past, because I've been so centric to yield max that I really want to broaden my horizons a bit. Although I'm not going to stop doing everything I'm doing related to the funds I'm doing on yield max. Don't worry about that. So in building this table, I wanted to be able to look at assets under management. The reason that becomes important is, first off, it's the viability of the fund, of the individual funds. It's the ultimate viability of the fund itself. So if you take Yield-Max, they've got 27 funds, and I think 24 are single stock, and 3 are funds of funds. And then I think they even call the inverse one separate, but the reality is that it falls in the single stock category. So I think it's 24 and 3 currently, and there'll be a lot more. But I wanted to dive in and sort of rank all ETFs out there and then get your feedback. I know some that I've owned, I've used, I've invested in, and then I want your feedback a little bit. So this dialing in first as an example on YieldMax is I put in the table the asset under management value. Well, that's simply the amount of shares by the share price. And don't look at this and say, oh, wait a minute, Bruce, it changed. Yeah, these are 3 days old, right? So when I built this table, I wasn't ready yet to do the video. So that's why the data's not, it could be Tuesday's data. I actually don't remember. It may be as far as 628, but it's within 1 week. And then I took some other data on the other funds that I'm going to dive into. Some I already know a fair amount about. Others, I'm looking for feedback from you guys. All right, so the beauty of this is I can now sort it any way I want. And what's kind of interesting, I built some charts for you. So if you go right out, we all know NVIDIA right now is sort of the stock market. So goes NVIDIA, sort of, so goes the stock market. And so goes the Mag 6 of the Mag 7, and Tesla's starting to come back. So that really is the stock market, all 7 of those, and NVIDIA's kind of the goat within the Mag 7, clearly. So it's not much different in YieldMax. The only difference is by being an income fund, you can get capped, right? It goes back, should I own the underlying? The growth guys go, hey, you're limited. No, we're not limited to 15%. But if NVIDIA goes up 50% in a week and we write our calls out 10%, we're going to get our lunch handed to us on that other 40% that's going to offset some of the gains on our synthetics, which is a pure long stock. So in that sense, we're handicapped. The perfect scenario for these income funds is to go up, just up to the amount that the calls are written out. Then we have that income, plus we get 100% of the move up, but stocks never behave like that, right? The other thing that's advantageous, just to make a point here, that's positive about the income fund, when they're flat to slightly down, we're collecting income. The underlying isn't, right? So we will almost always perform better on the downside than the underlying, because we're at least collecting some income every week. But if the underlying goes down 80%, we might be 72, we might be 78. You have to look at the particular, right? But anybody that says you have 100% of the downside and 15% only of the upside is totally incorrect. We may only have 30% of the upside in a situation where a stock doubles in 2 months, triples in 3 months. We simply can't keep that pace in writing these calls. But you will have an income. So as a reminder, before I dive deeper, always understand what you own, how it behaves, and then, as I'm doing for a lot of my followers and starting to do in the Discord, I talk about, well, if we're really bullish and we think this thing is running, why just buy the underlying? Why not buy a 2x of the underlying, right? 2x's tend to decay over time. But nothing beats a 2x when something is going up 15, 25% in a day for 2 or 3 days in a row. You own the underlying or you own the 2x. I'll own the 2x every day in that scenario. So not only can you look at growth versus income, you can look at your strategy. Again, this is referred to as active management. Some people just want income and they want passive income and they don't want to have to worry about hedging. I've done a lot of videos on hedging and I need to do what I call deeper dive or hedging 2, because now I get all the other questions that they want more and more of the details, right? So it makes sense, but I wanted to get that out there. Now let's just simply dive in here. So this is sorted currently. Well, it was. Let's do that. This is sorted by assets under management. So let me explain to you the slight difference. What if I want to go out here and sort by shares? Well, NVIDIA has the largest assets under management. Why is that? Well, you look at their price. I know, again, it's a few days old. And you look at their shares outstanding, and that's all assets under management is, right? But by Tesla having 44 million shares to NVIDIA's 26, again, a few days old, guys. Don't send me a bunch of comments and say, Bruce, it's 28. Why do you have 26, right? Just understand, it's close. And you simply multiply this, and just like I can tell you right now, Tesla's in the 17s, right? But let's not get around that point. These easily can be updated. The idea is I did update July distribution in here, right? That wasn't in, and I thought, let me put that in. So you have 2.56, you have 2.47. So the nice thing about the table is I can sort this on anything I want, right? So shares outstanding is one way of looking at these funds. Assets under management is another. So when you add all these funds up, this is where I was going, you get like I think it's 3.88 now. So that's how they rank ETFs, right? So if somebody says, how's YieldMax doing? Well, YieldMax currently is the 46th largest ETF ranked by assets under management, which is the way they measure ETFs, right? So some of you may know about Granite. I really like Granite a lot. And they're kind of king of 2X, some 3X, and both inverse, bull and bear. They kind of have the most of anybody. The CEO and founder is a Brit, and in the EU, they're a lot more liberal. So they had some 4X and some 5X, and he sort of brought that over here a number of years ago, and I really like what that fund is doing. And then obviously I report and talk about YieldMax. Most of my listeners know about YieldMax, right? It's the 48th ranked largest ETF. Defiance is out there, right? 69th. And you also have some of the option, the synthetic mentality. So Jay and Sega are helping Defiance with a few of their funds. And then Roundhill can be popular with some of its ODTE, right? The daily expiration type where they pay out on the weekly basis. I know some people are into SoFi. Rex has some offerings. Curve is interesting. They have 6 ETFs, and their ETFs are similar in that some of their ETFs, depending, use the synthetic long. But on their calls, they're writing their calls out on a monthly basis. So when you look at their yield, it's typically lower than YieldMax pays because YieldMax is collecting that weekly. But you'll find that they're a little less volatile. So from what I see and understand is they're closer to mimicking the underlying, right? Whereas when we're doing it on a weekly, we can really get overrun. Not that they can't get overrun on a monthly, clearly, right? It's just, it creates less volatility by the nature of that. So there's some interesting things. And they're doing 6 similar funds to what YieldMax is doing, but only in that category of 6. And then you have ProShares. I mean, ProShares have been around forever. I've been buying and using their ETFs. I use them a lot, and you guys in crypto, in BTC, there's a ton out there. There's the Ethereums, there's the BTCs. You know, I own some BITO. They have all the 2x bear, 2x bull. So there's a lot. And then in my GDXY for GDX, Van Eck has a lot of, you know, JNUG and Nugget. They have a lot of 2x. These used to be 3x, but I think the SEC came down. I didn't think there were any 3x allowed anymore, but I thought it the other day. I've seen a couple 3x's, so we may start to see that again. Somebody that knows whether 3x's are allowed or will be allowed more forthcoming in the U.S. That I'm always looking for data points on that. All right, so I think you get it. Let me jump in here. And then here's what I did, and this isn't complete. I didn't finish making this table. But who's the number 1 provider with assets under management? BlackRock, right? Vanguard has been around. Any of you with 401ks and still working, you're very familiar. You know, my 401k was with Fidelity, right? And they're the 11th largest. Wisdom Tree, I mentioned Van Eck, JP Morgan, another big name. First Trust, Schwab, right? SCHD, you know, Schwab. Look at the fund count. Look at the massive amount of funds that BlackRock has. So we all know there's 27. If we go down here to, they may even be 24 here on YieldMax. No, I've got it at 27. Yeah, I tried to update this where I knew data, right? So as you go down this list, you know, T. Rowe Price, Granite that I mentioned. So the input I'm looking for you guys, like and subscribe my video, and then tell me which fund you like and you're utilizing, and which fund you want to know more about their offering. And I'll either schedule some interviews with their management, or I'll also dig into them and report on them. So that's what I got for that. I got a couple final things to show you guys. So here's something that's also I get questions on. I've seen other YouTubers report on this, but I'd be negligent if I didn't tell you I was aware of it. So some of you guys, and I say some because it's, you know, maybe 10% of the people that I have that I'm talking with are saying, hey, Bruce, I'm retired and I want income on the different weeks. For me, it really doesn't matter because I don't depend on that income that much. But in the case of Defiance, some of their products, like their IWMY on the Russell 2000, that's a week 1 payer. YieldMax, as we know on the single ETFs, is kind of the end of the first week, beginning of the second week, right? It usually falls around the 8th. So you've got 21 choices there. I just picked Misty and threw out their last distribution. But the reality is, actually, there's 24 choices, right? As the rest of them start paying that are new. And then we also, if you want a third week payer, then you can go Ulti, YMAG, or YMAX, right? So there are three choices, and I grabbed an Ulti, I think that's the June Ulti payment. On Curve, they have six choices, right? And they basically are like the big six. They're part of the Mag 6, the Apple, the Microsoft, the Amazon, the Google. So I picked TSLP for Tesla, and that one paid 0.443. So in some cases, they do covered calls, pure covered calls. In other cases, they use a synthetic with a covered call strategy, right? But their covered call for the strategy type, right, because it's not a true covered call, is written at the month level and not at the week level. And then you got funds like Roundhill that have these weekly and some other choices. So it's kind of hard to say what the distribution is, right? Because it's going to vary a lot. But since it pays weekly, I stuck that in the category of that can be a fourth week payer. The truth is it can be any week payer you want, right? So let me know if you want to know more about the multiple weeks. And then I'll close this out with a couple of charts. So here's the ETFs assets under management, right? You see NVIDIA, Tesla, Coney, Misty, YMAX. Those are your big five, right? Followed closely by AMZ, AMD. And look at YMAG. Even though it's paying really well, it doesn't have as many people in it. So I find that kind of interesting. Maybe they're finally waking up to the fact that the higher the big six within the S&P 500 are, the less undervalued the other 494 are, and ultimately that will switch. It hasn't yet, but I suspect that's forthcoming. You know, it's the old adage, do you skate to the puck or do you skate where the puck is going? So here's another way of looking at this. Here's shares outstanding, right? Because you have a big difference. Tesla by far has the most shares outstanding. They're just not very expensive relative to NVIDIA, right? And then Coney, because Coney's down, they have a lot of shares compared to Misty. Misty's typically been in the high 20s. I mean, the BTC stuff I know has been hit hard lately. And then you see YMAX, which is the fund of all funds, right? And Ulti remains popular, even though it's a science experiment gone bad that's maybe getting better. Don't throw hate mail, guys. I'm just calling it what it is. You know, it's somewhat of an experiment. I think what's caused it to go bad is they haven't found a consistent offering in there. I think once they get that in there, I think they're closer to it. It'll probably stabilize. Okay, so that's what I got for you guys. I hope this was helpful. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Have a great rest of your holiday weekend. Bye.